Hi, I'm Lakshmi Nambiar. I run SRISHTI Art Gallery, the oldest art gallery in Hyderabad. We are currently celebrating 25 years. I'm super excited to be showcasing this exhibition, Celebrating Dashrath Patel. Dashrath Patel is somebody who started NIT Ahmedabad, but apart from that, he was a painter, a sculptor, a ceramist, a photographer, and I fell in love with the way he thought and the way he looked at light and looked at abstraction. And I'm just super happy that we were able to bring a large collection of his works to Srishti in Hyderabad. So this show has photographs, his drawings, and very early works, as well as one of his collage works. I am most drawn to his early works because that's something that we have not seen before. It was found in a box after he passed away in his apartment, and it's, we are showcasing it for the first time here. And when you look at these works, these are expressionist, impressionist style works. These are works that most of the modern artists in the early times, in the 50s, used to do. So it's the way these young students were taught how to paint, and it's outstanding how he works with light, form, shapes, and I hope people can come and see it. We also have some of his drawings because it shows a movement from his student days to going to Paris, Czechoslovakia, and you would find that he starts moving into complete abstraction. So we have some drawings which is kind of the link towards, and then the photographs that he has done, where it's absolutely fascinating for me how he looked at patterns and shapes and took photographs of ordinary everyday things. And it just looks fabulous, and the perspective is outstanding.
So, okay, this is a proud, privileged moment to be here at this Srishti Gallery in Hyderabad. Today is December 5. This is 4 days after Dashrath Patel's anniversary day. He passed away in the year 2010. And here we are celebrating this extraordinary artist of the Indian modernist group, who trained in visual art, painting, sculpture, printmaking, etc. In the 1940s and 50s, and went on to become one of India's leading modernists, a great painter, of course, but then he moved from painting to design, to ceramics, to architecture, to photography, and so on, and kept experimenting with various media. And what we are displaying here today in this exhibition is a selection of his mainly a selection of his oil paintings, which are of the 1950s period, interspersed with some of his other work, which includes, for example, drawings of this kind, which he has always been doing in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Every decade, his style would change, and he would experiment and explore with different ways of blocking form, blocking light, playing with color, and so on. So Dashrath is, in that sense, a seminal artist of our times. Not too many people know about him because he moved so rapidly from discipline to discipline that he didn't stay fixed in one label like an artist or a photographer or a designer. He just kept moving. So this is a hope that in the next 2 years, 2027 is going to be Dashrath Patel's centenary, and it's a hope that in the next 2 years, through these kind of small exhibitions, we'll build up some kind of a critical mass of understanding and appreciation of his work amongst the art-loving public in the country. And towards that, I must thank Srishti Gallery and Lakshmi Nambiar and all the staff here, Salavu and Preeti, and all the others who have contributed so enormously to putting this up and making this special landmark show.
Hi, I'm Amit Jain. I'm based out of New Delhi and in Hyderabad right now at SRISHTI Art Gallery for Dashrath Patel's exhibition. For me, this show is extremely special. I was first introduced to Dashrath Patel's work in 1997 as a young student who was applying to SRISHTI Art College in School of Design in Bangalore. And I was staying in a collector's home who had a few large Dashrath Patel's collages on his wall, and that's the first time I heard about him. And it was just by chance that later, in a couple of years, I saw the retrospective in NGMA. For me, Dashrath's works were very, very different. They were those abstract collages. And here I am standing with these fantastic works, early 50s to mid 50s, of what I would suggest of plein air paintings, most of them to be, he didn't have a camera that time, so I knew that he was either painting from memory or also from on site. So when I look at these paintings, I see a sense of color palette and the color usage, which is very vibrant. It captures the soul of that space. Also, and I think just the thick impasto that he uses is extremely important. So for me to see these early works for the first time in my life is quite a treat. Dashrath Patel is an institution, and I think nowadays when we look at art, we look at very different. We look at artists who usually come in auctions and they're very popular. We all know that he was the founding director of National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad, an institution that leads the thought process for innovative design practices in India. But the fact that he could move from being a professor to an artist to a sculptor to a ceramist to a designer, he also designed pavilions for the Festival of India, for example, shows how dynamic and versatile he was as a person and a constant learner and experimenter. And I think after many years, Dashrath's works are coming back in public view, and I think people should remember the genius he was. And I think this is a great way to start that discussion towards his 100th birthday, which is in a couple of years.
Artist, along with our very own Chippa Sudhakar's works, and we are ending the year with the show of Dashrath Patel, a modern master, and somebody that I keep saying I'm in love with his mind. He, of course, we are going to have a talk about that. You will hear a lot more about him. But it's been such a privilege for me to be able to bring his works here, and thanks to Mr. Sadanand Menon who helped me, do that. And I'm really at loss for words because this is how important this man is, Dashrath Patel is, and it's a pity that a lot of people do not know about him. A lot of people do know in the art world, but and I really hope that all of you would understand a little bit more about Dashrath, learn a little bit more about him, understand his life, his story, and why he is important in today's context. So with that, I want to welcome Amit Jain, who is a dear friend, advisor to SRISHTI, collector, curator, and he would be having a discussion with Mr. Sadanand Menon, who is a writer, curator, and a very dear friend of Dashrath Patel. And so with that, I hand over to Amit.
So just to give you a little context, I was first introduced to Dashrathji's work in 1997 as a young student of art who applied to SRISHTI School of Design. And I was staying with a collector in Bangalore who had amazing Dashrath at home. Then I applied to NID. That's when I got to know more about Dashrath, and then happy to see the 1999 retrospective that Sadanandji curated. Good news is I didn't get to any of the schools, and I'm getting a chance to say thanks to Dashrath in my own way today. Mr. Menon is
Sadanand.
Sadanandji.
G chodo Sadanand.
Sadanand is a cultural critic who's extremely well known in the art fraternity. He's written a lot for the Times as well. He has commented on the politics of culture at multiple times. And most importantly, he's been a very dear friend of Dashrath for as long, I think, 40 years, 45 years. And in the last one day that I've been spending with Sadanand here, I've been realizing that how close that friendship was as a young writer, curator, to understand an artistic practice and to take it to a full circle with the retrospective at NGMA Delhi and then Bombay. So the idea today is to get to know an artist who somehow has slipped down a lot of memory lanes in the art world where the market tends to control who's known and who's not. But in our perspective, Dashrath remains one of those geniuses, a great mind, who could become whatever he wanted to. He was like terracotta. You could mold him into anything and he'll deliver. So I think to start with, for all of us, if you could maybe give a little bit of history of who was Dashrath as per the way you knew him, what was his background. I knew he came from a Gujarati family who was doing very well, and he chose art and not business as well. Mm-hmm. So maybe we start with that point.
Yeah, thank you, Amit, and thanks to all of you for being here. Thanks to Lakshmi and SRISHTI Gallery and her wonderful team for having organized this. What Amit is asking me to do is to natter on and create a long story, but I think we should keep it short. In Dashrath's case, a bit like I was telling somebody in the evening, in this folk tales about Superman. When Superman is flying, the question is, what is that? Is that a bird? Is that a plane? So similarly, with Dashrath Patel, these questions are there. What is he? Is he an artist? Is he a ceramist? Is he a photographer? Is he a designer? What is he? We don't know. Because here was a man who was constantly slipping those labels, and the moment you called him a photographer, suddenly he is doing something completely different and so on. But interestingly, a person who was able to unify all mediums through a particular visual language. So to take it in a biographical sense, he spent 4 years in the 8th standard in the CN school, CN Vidyalaya as it's called in Ahmedabad. Refusing to pass, he had his own way of jumping class and taking some paper and pencil and cycling down to Sarkhej, which is a beautiful mosque, and sitting at the steps, and as the lights fall on the steps, the wonderful graphics that play of shadow and light. And with the result, when the exams came, he would always be flunking. But with the result, the story in Ahmedabad is he would know 4 steps of people in each family. First, the elder brother who was in the same class with him, then the next brother who was in the same class with him, then the next sister was in the same class, and so on. So he had this tremendous connections that he built and friendships. But his teachers were some extraordinary people. CN school, CN Vidyalaya in Ahmedabad had for their arts teacher Ravi Shankar Raval. Ravi Shankar Raval is known as the Kala Guru, like the Tagore of Gujarat. And Ravi Shankar Raval spotted pretty early on that here was a man who had boy who had some talent. And he used to dismiss this accusation that, but he doesn't study, he is not passing, he is studying in the same class, sitting on the same bench, etc., etc. He searched them all up saying, but he has a different kind of talent. And it was he who suggested that he go and, I was very young, 15, 16, to be taken to Shantiniketan to see whether he would get admission there. But in Shantiniketan, in Dashrath's own words, he found the whole atmosphere there too dhela dhala, as he said, too sentimental, too romantic, which didn't fit his temperament. So then somebody said, why not College of Art in Madras, the oldest arts college in the country. And at that time, the great Devi Prasad Roy Chaudhary was the principal there. And the story goes that somebody took him to Madras, and they went to meet Devi Prasad Roy Chaudhary. In Madras, he had this great friend, Harindranath Chattopadhyay, whom we had met earlier. So it was Harinda who actually took him to the College of Art. And the story goes that Roy Chaudhary was sitting at a chair with a table in front of him with a little glass of whiskey, evening 4 o'clock. enjoying some students who scattered around doing their things. And when Harinda took him and introduced him to Roy Chaudhary and said, here is a boy who wants to join your college, study art. Roy Chaudhary did not ask him, so what have you done? Show me some work of yours. Show me some example of what you have drawn or whatever. He didn't go that route. Or show me your school certificate. He didn't do anything like that. His question was, Kushti karega? So Dashrath's eyes brightened. He said, yeah, certainly. So they put another chair there, and both this young 16-year-old fellow and the 60-year-old Roy Chaudhary, they did this Punjab business, in which Roy Chaudhary defeated Dashrath. And he said, Acha, from tomorrow you join college. So this is how he joins arts college. And this is how his training begins. But that, in a sense, defines the kind of personality A, the student was, B, the teacher was. We had a fantastic relationship over 4 years. And then when Dashrath graduated, he graduated. He actually graduated. And he even got a scholarship to go to the École des Supérieures Beaux-Arts in Paris. And he goes there and he does another 3 years there. And when he comes back to India, Devi Prasad Roy Chaudhary has just left the college, retired as principal of College of Art. But he's been commissioned to do these two major sculptures in the city of Madras, as it was called then, which are still the landmarks in Madras. One is the Gandhi sculpture, and the other is the Triumph of Labour sculpture. For both of which, Roy Chaudhary invited Dashrath to be his partner, his assistant. And I have at home in Madras, in Chennai, the maquettes, the plaster of Paris maquettes that he made for the Gandhi sculpture, for example. What angle the feet should be, whether a toe should be up or little finger should be up. All those very interesting experiments they did with the idea of movement. When you make a tall statue of Gandhi on his Dandi March, how do you show movement? What is the method of showing movement? It's a still sculpture, but how does a sculpture capture movement? Those studies in that. Anyway, so this is how his early sort of formation happened, and I think more than that, it'll get too biographical.
Anyways, we move to the next decade in another question. But Chennai, Madras that time customized for his papers and his brushes and everyone to be there, and he would cycle around, not only in Tamil Nadu, but also when he was in Paris. So this is the time when he made extremely important friendships. And I think the idea of visual arts and performing arts also really merged with him. So maybe we could talk about those years, because it showed that he was very open as a personality to learn. He would sit in recitals, I believe, of dances to understand what light could do, what movement could come in. And I think that is something that one should also know about Dashrath, that how did he build those friendships? How did they work in his life? That could be his Chandralekha ji and all of that.
Yeah, so I guess when you look at Dashrath's career, he would acknowledge several gurus, several people who influenced him. He may not call them masters, but certainly people whose very presence or their lifestyle or their way of thinking moved him deeply and made him reflect on himself every time he was in that company. To begin with, of course, Devi Prasad Roy Chaudhary. At the same time, Harinath Chattopadhyay, who was there, one of the great poets and writers and political activists of India. Sarojini Naidu's youngest brother, who was born in Calcutta but grew up here in Hyderabad. At that time, another person, young, same age as Dashrath, had moved from Bombay, Gujarat to be in Chennai, which was Chandralekha, very well-known dancer, choreographer. And these three lived in the same house. And as they say, whenever Harinath Chattopadhyay, we called him Baba, every time Baba was either singing or reciting a poem or painting, he was all that. The others had to be around like an audience. Whenever Chandralekha was rehearsing her Bharatanatyam dance, the others had to sit and watch. Whenever Dashrath was painting, the others had to stand around and make comments on what he was doing. So this kind of a group activity led to a certain set of friendships, certain relationships. which in today's time, it's fashionable to call it transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, etc., etc. Whereas I have coined a word for it. I call it anti-disciplinary, where you completely shatter this idea of one fixed discipline and another fixed discipline, and then both trying to meet. The fact that it can be more porous, the fact that all disciplines can have the same values, the same approach, the same way of looking at things. In Dashrath's case, as it grew and as we look back on his work today, it seems like this tremendous visual ability to connect, a certain kind of formative language of the eye, where patterns of light, patterns of movement, and patterns of color speak in a manner common to his photographs, common to his paintings, common to his ceramic work, common to his collages, and so on. And this is, when you put them all together, it's absolutely palpable. The 1998-99 retrospective that you referred to, which we did in NGMA, Delhi first and then in Bombay, tried to capture that by juxtaposing, completely rejected the idea of taking chronological route in the retrospective. We tried to take this disciplinary route where you look at the connection between the way he drew, the way he took a photograph, the way he painted, the way he worked with color patterns and patches and a collage and so on. Here one has tried to do a bit like that, but it's a very, very tiny sample. But when you see it on a large scale, it becomes very evident that here is an artist who is very deliberately refusing to want to be called a painter, want to be called a designer, want to be called a photographer. He would reject those labels. By the time you say what it is, he has moved to something else. So this was a constant pattern in his life, and it's quite visible in the work that is left behind, and it's quite a large body of work, because he also had this peculiar tendency of not wanting to sell, not wanting to exhibit too much. So there is one of India's greatest photographers who has never had a single solo photography exhibition in his life. One of the most extraordinary studio pottery and industrial pottery practitioners of India, who's never had a single solo pottery exhibition in his life, except once when he came back from Czechoslovakia and exhibited in Jahangir Art Gallery, where the review was written by Alkazi of all people, who said, we have copies of that review, where he says that it cannot be possible that someone who left Bombay as a painter, working in the Bholabhai Desai studio, goes away for 1 year and comes back a ceramist. It's not a ceramist of this class. I'm sure he must not have done it. This is there in the review, etc., etc. So he had that kind of ability to jump out of his skin and adapt to circumstances, adapt to his own, fantasies and whims, and not follow accepted canons.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Bholabhai Institute, and this is important because I didn't know that he was part of the same group like Gaitonde Hussain, Ram Kumar. They were all working in Bholabhai Desai Institute in Bombay. And that is something that I could never actually digest yesterday when you told me. And I think there are stories from there that are quite funny or quite experiential of his time compared to today's lifestyle of an artist. So maybe we can touch upon that, especially related to, we were discussing Soli's role in that process. Maybe because, we all, when we think of modern art today, we of course come across names of Hussain and Gaitonde much more often. But little did I realize that there was one studio for Dashrath also. And I think that's important to bring about.
Well, I guess even more important is to realize that every city needs a space which will be friendly and nurturing for artists of any kind who necessarily don't fit in. Today, these spaces are called galleries, these spaces are called studios, etc., etc. But there was a time in the 1940s and 50s when the practice of art was not all that easy. It was still in a nascent state. Modern art, or the move towards modernity, was still looked at with some suspicion. Is this Indian enough? are we showing our back to tradition? Various such questions came up. It's come up in every discipline, whether it's music or dance or architecture or whatever. You keep encountering these debates and discussions again and again. So interestingly, in Bombay, today it's called Mumbai, but somehow Bombay is what comes to the mouth. This man called Bhulabhai Desai, who was one of India's great lawyers, among those who defended Bhagat Singh, for example. And at one point, if I'm not mistaken, even Motilal Nehru, when he was arrested on charge with sedition and so on. Bhulabhai Desai, before he passed away, he dedicated a huge amount of his wealth to the city. And when he was asked what the city should do with that, he actually said, why not make a center for creative work? Now, nobody knew exactly what that center for creative work would mean. And before it could be defined, he passed away. But his son, Dhiraj Desai, who was also fairly well known as a writer and a businessman, and was made ambassador to Switzerland or something, the mantle fell upon him to continue this. And before he could do it, at the very young age of about 40-something, he also passed away. Now, his close friend was somebody called Swali Batliwala, another very well-known lawyer, who gave up his legal practice to fulfill this dream of both Bhulabhai Desai and Dhiraj Desai, and thus set up this center along with Madhuriben Desai, who later on became Dhiraj's wife, who became the vice chancellor of SNDT University and so on. Very important feminist writer and scholar, sociologist. So the Bhulabhai Desai Trust built right at the edge of Warden Road, which is today called Bhulabhai Desai Road, building a 24-story building called Sagar Ganga or something, where there were 18 studios created for artists at the monthly rental of 1 rupee. For 1 rupee, you could rent those rooms. And the artists of that period, roughly from 1954-55 onwards, who were all at the nascent stage, they were not earning money through their art. There was M.F. Hussain, who was being recognized as a painter, but his income came from painting cinema hoardings on Regal Cinema and Eros Cinema and so on. All whole night he'll be painting those huge hoardings, and which is what eventually what came into his work, the idea of scale and so on. S.H. Ara, who was there, was a driver in the Japanese consulate, and in his spare time would be painting. Hussain also made dolls. There was Raza, who was a little better off. Tayyab Mehta, struggling very hard. Bal Chabra. Various people who were doing, somebody was a frame maker. So nobody really had an identity as an artist, but they were aspiring artists. And Dashrath Patel was one of them, Gaitonde, V.S. Gaitonde. One room was kept specially closed for Yehudi Menuhin. Whenever Yehudi Menuhin traveled, which was quite frequent, to collaborate with Ravi Shankar, this room would be opened and Menuhin would practice, and all these artists would be the audience. Yehudi Menuhin has written somewhere that nowhere in the world I've had such a extraordinarily creative audience, where everybody sitting in front of me was either already an artist or on the verge of being an artist. So on and so forth. So anyway, Swali Bhai then decided to have an economic, financial model plan for these artists. They're all poor fellows who are having their breakfast in the Irani shop nearby, but not able to pay the bill. So there was a credit, notebook in which the credit thing is written. The laundry had to be done. They're not able to pay the laundry guy. So the whole thing is written down in one notebook. Swali Batliwala every Saturday would invite a group of 6 money bags of Bombay, industrial such people. A constant feature in that was Homi Bhabha, who started the scientist who started the Bhabha Atomic Research Center, for a dinner. A sit-down, a long table, all these artists would be there, and these 6 invitees. The dinner would be over by 8 o'clock, 7:38. Then the job of Swali Batliwala was to take each of take this group of invitees to each studio, each artist studio one by one, and ensure that at least one painting was bought. For some grand sum, 100 rupees, 80 rupees, 75 rupees, those were the huge, extraordinary prices of that time. And with that one purchase, next day, this entire group of artists will get together and write off all their debts with the Irani shop, with the launderer, with with taxiwala, whatever, wherever there were debts, this would suffice to pay it off. With the remaining money, they would all go to Regal Cinema to see a matinee show because that was only air-conditioned building nearby. So they may not watch the film, they just go to sleep. But this was a sort of camaraderie and friendship which existed at that time. Definitely there was competition. Definitely there must have been jealousies. Definitely there must have been whatever tensions and so on. But the way this center enabled a particular culture of art to develop in Bombay, it's still there. It's still there. Bombay is a welcoming city for artists today. And even though Bholabhai Desai Center no longer really exists, but the legacy lives on. But Indian art history is written in a very, I would say, a bit of a skewed way. So many artists present here, young artists here, probably have never heard of this place, probably have never heard of this kind of collaboration. I keep calling it the black hole in Indian art history. A lot of things get into the black hole, never to be heard of again. But this is, for me, if I were to write an art history of India and Bombay at that moment, this would be a very glorious chapter by which a certain collective, a community of artists came to be. The sort of little flowering of that I can see today happening in the Kochi Biennale. Many years, so many years later, 70 years later almost, the Kochi Biennale has become that kind of a place where this kind of nurturing is happening. But I personally believe that every city needs a space like this. Every city needs to have a place where, without thinking about expense, creative people can work, and not just, for example, visual artists. Maybe it should be a cross. Where every form of expression, finds its place, and there is a conversation between all these things.
Yeah, but for those who don't know, then Solly, once I think the center shut down, went on to become the president of the Bombay Art Society, and then invited the Gandhis, Ketu and Kaushik Gandhi, to open up Bhangi Art Gallery in Bombay. So that's also how he was instrumental in adding another historical moment of Indian art. But another kind of a friendship developed in Paris, which again, we all know Krishna Reddy went to study at Atelier 57. And little did I know that Dashrath Patel was there at the same point of time. And what we see in the exhibition, which we've already had been there are amazing pictures that Dashrath has taken. And before Paris, he didn't consider himself as a photographer. But there was a chance encounter, I believe, that led to him picking up the camera for the first time. And I think that is something for you to share.
Yeah, this is something that Dashrath himself has narrated many times, and those who know him know this story well, as to how he picked up the camera. The story goes that he didn't particularly care for photography. He thought it was in his own words, a dumb medium because it was two-dimensional, whereas in painting and in other plastic arts, he could cross the dimension. So École des Beaux-Arts, the final year students, they were having an exhibition, and it was at the Barbizon Gallery, where as the exhibition was going on, in Dashrath's own words, somebody walked in, an elegant-looking man, wearing a Leica camera like a garland or like a necklace. He walked in and he looked around and he looked at the works. Then Dashrath was standing near his paintings, and he came up to Dashrath and said, "Do you photograph?" And he said, "No, I don't." So this man said, "Would you like to photograph?" So he said, "No, I don't particularly care for the camera." So he said, "But try. What's the harm? Here is my camera. Just try. Take a few shots of this room or whatever." And so Dashrath did that. He didn't know who it was. Only later on he realized, people came and told him, do you know who you're talking to? That's a great photographer, Henri Cartier-Bresson. So a week later or 10 days later, Cartier-Bresson invited, he had a particular fondness for India. Cartier-Bresson, as you know, those who know the history of photography in India, Cartier-Bresson should be called an Indian photographer. Because at every crucial moment of the formation of India from 1947 onwards, Cartier-Bresson has been here at almost all those occasions. 47, he was there during partition. 48, Gandhi's assassination, he was right there, and so on and so forth across the. So he had a certain fondness for India, and he apparently was very generous towards Indian students who were studying in Paris, particularly art. So he had invited this group of 5 or 6, including Raza, to his house for dinner. And on the table, there were a lot of photo prints that were scattered. He told Dashrath, try and pick 1 or 2 pictures that you might like. Dashrath picked one. Cartier-Bresson said, do you know who shot it? You shot it. you have a way of seeing. This is what I'm saying. You must photograph, because that will help your painting. It will help you see better. And it was from that point on that Dashrath, he went and bought a camera. He started photographing. But as he himself used to say, Dashrath used to say that I'm not photographing for display, for exhibitions and so on. Because I have a limitation of language. My language skills are very poor. Dashrath had probably a vocabulary of 400 words in English, Gujarati, Hindi put together. But with that, he could spin magic. Had he been sitting here today, all of us would have been with our jaws open listening to him, because he could speak in a very mesmerizing way. He could use words which we never imagined, could be used. So he used the photographs he took as a tool of communication to tell his friends in India that this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm experiencing, and so on. But when he came back and joined NID, this became one of his most significant accomplishments, because his works, his photographs began to, within quotation, represent India in all the exhibitions that the National Institute of Design did between 1966, beginning with the Nehru exhibition, up till 1978, which was the Agri Expo in Delhi, the Montreal Fair, the Osaka Fair, the New York Fair, the Tokyo Fair, you name it. Any big event in which India was participating, in that exhibition, the photographs were of Dashrath Patel. So in one sense, his photographs represented the country. The other interesting thing is, even though he considered Cartier-Bresson his guru, Cartier-Bresson had an extraordinary attitude to photography. He believed in what is called, it's a very, very famous phrase, I'm sure everybody here has heard about this, he called it the decisive moment. That if you want to talk about this evening, for example, both of us sitting here might be taking hundreds of photographs with our cameras or phones, but there must be that one picture that decides what this evening is. Cartier-Bresson had this, the alertness of a hunter. He could capture that exactly. So whether it was the march of the Red Army into Beijing with Mao Zedong leading them, whether it was Castro and Che Guevara leading their revolutionary army into Havana, whether it was a uprising in Hungary, whether it was the fall of Berlin, whether it was the death of Gandhi, he believed in one picture. And his entire oeuvre is decided by that one photograph. So all the Cartier-Bresson books that you see, for example, there are those single shots. Dashrath, while agreeing with Cartier-Bresson, decided not to follow that road. He believed in the serial, the next glance. I see this now, what am I seeing next? What am I seeing next? So he has this astounding series of photographs of India, where entire communities, entire festivals, entire lifestyles of people. I was talking to Ramesh Babu this evening, where he was showing me his photographs. Where is Ramesh Babu? He said, yeah, there he is. Which is taken of how people walk on the street, how people sit on the street, how people sleep on the street. This is what Dashrath is doing. Any part of the country you go, there is a certain body language people use. There's a certain way in which you walk in a cluster, or sit in a cluster, or get together in a bus stop, or stand in a queue, etc., etc. which he found very interesting, this gestural language. And I'm quite sure this was also inspired by watching Chandralekha and her dance movements and so on. And later on, he went on to do serial recording of all her choreographies. From 1984, when Chandralekha came back to dance and choreography after being absent for 24 years and did 10 major productions, every one of them in saturation documented by Dashrath. At least 35,000 pictures which are in our archive of each of those works, the rehearsals, the performances, and so on, the backstage. So the serial looking is a very special thing, and I can fill SRISHTI Gallery with an exhibition tomorrow of maybe 120 photographs just of the way the Rathwa tribe in Gujarat does a certain kind of marriage ritual. Extraordinary images, color and form and movement and so on. I can do a separate exhibition just of the Puram festival in Thrissur. At least about 80 photographs. Each one very, very dramatic. And so this is a manner of his seeing. And the photograph, therefore, was never this singular thing. And which is probably why this solo exhibition of Dashrath never really happened during his lifetime. And even after his lifetime, I have curated one in Ahmedabad, very small one. But I personally think we are moving toward this exhibition, for example, is a precursor to 2027, which will be his centenary year. So we're planning a series of exhibitions starting from Hyderabad, maybe next year something in Bombay, something in Bangalore, something in Chennai, and eventually maybe a bigger one in Delhi, where one can display this photographic intent of this person in a slightly larger way so that the picture gets clear.
When you all go back inside and see the show again, please look at the paintings in detail, because you will see that camera frame kind of imagery, even though he wasn't using the camera that time. I think that's what Henry Cartier-Bresson did. He said, you are looking like through a frame, but you don't know it yet. And I believe some of these pictures, when he was taking, maybe Bresson was also alongside taking a different frame.
Yeah, definitely.
You did mention that. I know we will have many questions, but I want to touch upon Dashrath's most important career is when he was invited by the Sarabhais to Ahmedabad to set up the National Institute of Design, India's premier design institute now. And I think that story itself, he gave 20 odd years to NID and made it a globally known force for design practices. How did he get that job? Because he wasn't qualified, I believe.
Yeah, he wasn't qualified, but the Sarabhais knew him. This is an extraordinary family in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, the Sarabhai family. Each one, Ambalal Sarabhai, who set up the calico mills and so on. His sister, Anusuya Ben Sarabhai, gave up all the riches and became a chela of Gandhi. And Ambalal Sarabhai is promoting mill cotton. Anusuya Sarabhai is going the opposite way and promoting handloom cotton, and so on and so forth. And then Ambalal Sarabhai's sons, Gautam Sarabhai, Gira Sarabhai, Mrinali Sarabhai, Mandakini Sarabhai, various others who were there. Each one an important name in their field. Gautam Sarabhai was a mathematician, Gira Sarabhai, an architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, trained, etc., etc. And they had a way of spotting people and including them in whatever projects they had. But when they heard that the government of India had the possibility of setting up a design school, and they were invited invited Buckminster Fuller, the great architect and thinker and philosopher. But Bucky Fuller suggested such an extraordinary project that everybody got frightened. Government of India got quite frightened that we can't do this. It's too big a vision. Then they invited the architect and who built Chandigarh.
You said Louis Khan also.
No, but Corbusier. They invited but Corbusier said, I'll do an architectural thing for you, so he did Chandigarh. Then they went to Charles and Ray Eames, who were well-known designers based in New York. And when the Sarabhais heard this name, Charles and Ray Eames, their ears, antennae went up. And Charles and Ray Eames traveled in India and they produced what's called the Eames Report, or it's actually called the India Report, which says the finest example of appropriate design that you can think of is the lota, the common lota that you find. That's the most sophisticated, the most ergonomic design that one can think of. And the entire project of developing a new design theory in education policy in India should be based around the lota. And they suggested the best venue for this would be Bangalore. Because Bangalore at that time was a retirement town, sleepy town, very nice, a lot of space, a lot of empty spaces, not like the Bangalore of today. It wasn't an IT city yet, etc. So when the Sarabhais heard this, they came all the way to Bangalore. They persuaded Charles and Eames to rethink the venue, not make it Bangalore, but please come to Ahmedabad. We'll give you better space right on the river bank, this, that, and the other. But in the report, you must mention to the government of India that this should happen in Ahmedabad. That's how NID went to Ahmedabad. And but this was early days. The report had been accepted. The idea of the funding for it, half of it would come from government of India, half would come from the Ford Foundation. But before the building would come up, where will it function from? So since the Sarabhais already had the calico mills running on the other side of the river, the land had already been spotted on this side of the river, but the other side is the calico mill, and they had 2 or 3 rooms available. So they said, now let's get 2 or 3 people who will start this project going. So the story, the legend is that NID began with 1 table, 1 chair, 1 room, and 1 Dashrath Patel. Because they went to Boulevard Center, they literally, caught him by the collar and said, you come, you don't know anything about design, but you know how to see, you're a photographer, you're a painter, you just come and be there and start recruiting people for this project. That's how NID begins. So there's a whole controversy about what was he? Was he a founding director? Was he the dean of the school? What was he? Was he the peon? Was he the chaprasi? He was all of that. He had to do jhadu in the room and he had to clean the stuff. And in those beginning days, very soon within 6 months, Kumar Vyas joined, and one by one, then the faculty grew, then the building came up, etc., etc. So the Sarabhais had this ability to spot who will do what. But once the idea of the institute got ready, this whole thing was, should we start a education program straight away? Because who will teach? Can Dashrath Patel teach? Can Kumar Vyas teach? Can the others who we have picked up, can they teach? And it was very clear that maybe they can't teach. So we need to train a cadre of students who will be equipped to teach a proper graduate program in design. So they dedicated the first 10 years, 1961 to 1974, was this training period of a set of about 28 students of that time who went on to become the faculty from 1974 onwards. It was an extraordinary project. I don't think very many education institutes in India have started like that. Today, it's a question we need to keep asking again and again. People who teach us in our schools and colleges, are they qualified? What is they called? Just because you have a degree, can you teach? There are such poor teachers, actually. You have knowledge, you have information, you have degree, but can you teach? Can you communicate something of value to others? Which is why everybody then migrates to the WhatsApp University and the Google University and all that, I suppose. So in this project, then Dashrath could shine because he didn't have a degree of any kind. He could never become the director of NID because he could not, or he did not like to read those reports and files and sign and all that. So by logic, he should have been the director for 20 years or whatever, but until his lifetime, but it never happened. Eventually, the directors who came were bureaucrats, were IAS officers, they were naval commanders, who had no clue about design. But this ability to be in multiple disciplines at the same time helped a lot because he could start department after. He started the graphic design faculty first, then found somebody who could head it. Then he moved to start the ceramic department. 4 years ago, they celebrated the 50th year of the ceramic department. And in that process, they have now set up a small museum within NID of all the products that Dashrath created as prototypes in that ceramic department. Then he moved to the photography department. He found another person who had gone to Paris to train with Cartier-Bresson, Dalbadi. See, Dalbadi was placed as the head of that. He moved to exhibition design department. So he would just move from this department to department because he had that ability to, like you were saying, like play. He could just move. I think it was the fact that he was not trapped in a degree or trapped in a label that enabled him to run. That I think eventually helped the way NID grew. Eventually helped many students who learned from this person who was never teaching, was never writing on a blackboard. He was doing things and showing them. So every project that NIT did during those 10 years, the students were the executors. The students were, can you imagine at the age of 18, 19, 20 to be taken to New York to set up this huge exhibition, or taken to Sao Paulo in Brazil to set up another huge exhibition, Nehru exhibition, to taken to Montreal. And this is how they learned. They made Dashrath said, I learned through making mistakes, and I don't mind my students making mistakes, but that's the only way they can learn. If every day you're going to do only success stories, then what's the point? It was the sort of theme here.
But in those 20 years, he contributed so much to the country, and he got the Padma for design and also for design education in 91, was it, or earlier, sorry?
81.
81.
And posthumously Padma Bhushan.
And posthumously Padma Bhushan. Wow. So, I know that in 97, 98, the retrospective happened, which is also going to be the last question, because I want you to define Dashrath now after his early time in Madras school, then becoming the founding director, if I may call him, of NID. But where does Dashrath stand today in values related to art? And I think that is a very important question, because many people have also forgotten him in his own institution. He was also kept purposely a side part of that history. So where do we stand today with Dashrath's vision? And then after that, in case anybody has questions, we can take on that and then go back to this exhibition and see it in a new way, I guess.
Yeah, so I won't stand in the way of the audience asking questions, but this is a tough question. Where does he stand today? Where do many people stand? I mean, where does Gandhi stand today? Does he have a leg to stand on? Etc. etc. Where does Ambedkar stand today? So Dashrath represents a moment where a possibility emerged of a particular kind of education, of a particular kind of approach to art, of a particular kind of vision, which if it has not proliferated, it's probably our own limitation and our own lack, and nothing to do with maybe the way he was. But it's also a factor of what I keep repeating in meeting after meeting, in seminar after seminar, this thing called the hole in Indian art history. So just to give you the example, we were talking about the Boulevard Desai Center, and there's 18 artists who are there, and all of them are on par, almost the same age group. Maybe Hussain was a little more, or a little older. Otherwise, everybody said this year is Tayyab Mehta centenary year, this year is Nasreen Mohammadi centenary year, this year is Gaitonde centenary year, Krishna Reddy centenary year, etc. etc. They're all almost the same age group. 2 years from now, Dashrath Patel centenary year. But when we discuss art history of that period, we will talk about Hussain, we will talk about Tayyab, we will talk about Raza, we will talk about Gaitonde. But some of the Prafulla Dahanukar, where is he? Sadanand Bakre, where is he? Dashrath Patel, where is he? Equal contributors. And if you see the early works of Tayyab or a Raza or a Hussain, they all look like what's looking inside. They all learnt in the same manner. For me, the Dashrath work that is shown here and the others, other larger body that exists, which will keep getting shown around now in the next few years, it's interesting because what you get to see, it's actually a very interesting factor that he did not sell. So when he passed away in his flat, we discovered under his cot a big wooden box which had been lying there. I've been to his house so many times, but when I then paid attention, some box is lying under the cot. But after he passed away, we were cleaning up the place, and also he pulled out this box, opened it, and it contained about almost 200 these paintings. What you're showing here is about 30 odd. There are 200 of them. The watercolors, there are pastels, there are crayons, there are oils. Many of them had cracks in them. Many of them had dust and maggots and all that. So we sent it to Delhi to a wonderful restorer, Sanjay Dher, who cleaned it up and all, and sent it. Very, very expensive. But what is fascinating is that if you put it all together, you get to see how art was being taught in India in the 1940s and 50s. Good friends Ravindra Reddy and Chipa and all are sitting here. They have been teachers. I'm sure there is a particular method you teach in your classrooms. Young aspiring painters or sculptors, how to work, how to draw your stretch your canvas, how to apply paint on it, how to create background, foreground, etc., etc. Here, it's very, very clear that the students are being told by teachers who are also practicing artists that you look at some art book, let's say a book of French artists, and you copy. Just copy. The way you can copy, you copy. And some of them became master copies. They could do better than a Cezanne, better than a Van Gogh or whatever. But Dashrath explained something in a very interesting way. He said, when we looked at the photographs of these works, our imagination went wild. We thought these artists were standing in front of a canvas, and like a mason throws cement onto the wall, they were throwing paint onto the canvas with a trowel, with a, creating impasto, creating layers. See the work of the Impressionists. He said, my jaw fell open because I realized with a shock that this was all brushwork. It was not throwing paint on the it was not trowel, it was not thick layering, it was delicate brushwork. And it completely changed my idea of what painting is, what art is, how to approach a blank canvas, etc., etc. So this, for me, the works here are a window to that moment in Indian art history where art is being taught in art institutes in Madras and JJ School, in College of Art, Calcutta, and probably even in Baroda, in a similar manner, where a certain imagination of what modern art is emerging, quite contrary to what modern art is doing out there in Europe. So it's a kind of indigenization of that whole thing. And for me, therefore, it's a very important body of work, which, if studied properly, studied in a art historical manner, not because of the greatness of the work. I wouldn't call any of these paintings here, great masterpieces. That would be too much of a thing to do. They're wonderful. They're the creations of a young artist. But the fact that it gives us a window into how art education existed and flourished at that time, quite different from what it is now 50, 60, 70 years later, is worth commenting on and documenting and learning from. That's a building block. And today, for example, I don't need to go to art school to become an artist technically. I can learn it online. I can go to exhibitions and see how people work and absorb from that. I can work with different kinds of technology. Very soon, I don't know what will happen to the community of artists sitting here when AI takes over. I mean, you'll all have to put certain question marks in that area, etc., etc. But I think this knowledge hasn't been recorded, how art was taught at that time. So even a great teacher, Devi Prasad Roy Chaudhary in Madras, N.S. Bendre in Baroda, Nandalal Bose in Shantiniketan, or Ram Kinkar Bhai, how are they doing? How are they teaching their students? What is the method? You don't know. It's almost similar to, if I take an analogy in music, how was Kirana Gharana taught? You know, Abdul Karim Khan started a school. And he had great students. There was an Amir Khan, there was Bhimsen Joshi, there was Gangubai Anagal, etc., etc. But what was the teaching method? We know. We don't know. It's a speculation. You have to keep listening to it to know that, okay, this was taught, this was taught, this was taught. My good friend Vidya Rao is sitting here, who learned from Naina Devi. And she's done a great job by writing about it. That this is the methodology. This is how I learned. Personalized, but very important. We don't know otherwise. So there are many such moments that are there in Indian art practice that go a-begging because of the lack of rigor in our pursuit of that history. And I personally believe that all arts colleges need to have history departments embedded into them. Chennai doesn't have it even today. It's like I said, oldest arts college in India, no art history department. It's not there in JJ School. It's not there in Delhi College of Art. Shantiniketan, yes. Baroda, yes. Visakhapatnam, yes. But Khairagad, yes. Very few places. So that's a problem.
I think as we build to 2027, maybe apart from the shows, we can have longer discussions on arts education and design education.
Very important.
And I think that would be a true tribute to someone like Dashrath Patel.
I'm sure that's a very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sadanand ji, for being here this evening. And these are great stories for all of us to know. Lakshmi, thank you for inviting us and presenting this fantastic exhibition of early paintings. I think what we can do is maybe we can take the questions in the gallery because the way you've talked about Dashrath, I think we will all be looking at his work very differently. All of you are welcome to step inside. We are happy to answer the questions. Please do ask. And thank you for being out here. The weather's great, some mosquitoes, but otherwise all good. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So my name is Navani. So I've done my bachelor and master degree in painting. So I passed out from University of Hyderabad. So first of all, it was lovely to hear the stories and your experiences, your perspectives and all observations with the story. So where I was actually connecting myself. So I studied my master's in painting, but I became a designer. So over a period of time with the financial struggles and all the responsibilities, I got an opportunity so I became a designer. So now I've started exploring and looking at back with my education and practices and current trends, design, technology, all that aspect. Same like I do also love to do sometimes painting and sometimes photography. Sometimes I love to capture the moment. So I bought a camera. So all that this similar, this whatever you put like anti-disciplinary or multidisciplinary thing that I do also have. So now the question is for you, right? First question is like, what would be your advice to the young artists and the current generation young artists who are working like as like this multidisciplinary pressure? The question majorly is like, what would be your advice for young artists who are working as a multidisciplinary or anti-disciplinary thing? The first question, and then how do we basically survive? For example, all the experts and successful people say that consistency is the key. So there is a fear of doing all this. Like example, if I am practicing painting, if I do continue, that is fine. So I'll get a recognition of Navneet is working on. I mean, he's a painter, so we do paint. But when I start sculpture or any kind of a different medium, so people recognize like, oh, is it multidisciplinary? So he's doing different ways and then putting up his perception or all experiences and expressing himself in a different. So the question is like, one is like, how do you advise to the young people?
No, I understand what you're asking.
Yeah,
I get it.
The first question. Second question would be like, how should the galleries would support and encourage this kind of multidisciplinary artists who are coming and joining them in working? Thank you.
Your question has 2 or 3 parts. The advice part I'll completely avoid. I have no advice to anybody. I'm a complete faltu. I can't advise anybody on anything. Everybody has to find their own path and struggle and find. So Amit reminded me there is when the 1998 exhibition of Dashrath, I had to write a curatorial note in the catalogue, and I was wondering, what does one say about him? He's a very dear friend of mine. I've known him for 30 years, 35 years. What do I write about him? And then I remembered an exhibition I saw of a Japanese painter in Paris in 1980. I'd gone with my good Indian artist friends who live in Paris, Vishwanathan and Akitam, and we had all gone together to see, Raza was also, we had gone to see this exhibition of this Japanese painter called Hokusai. And I'm sure all the artists have heard of Hokusai, who's been appropriated by the advertising world, by the cinema world, everybody, that, the wave over Kanagawa, the big tsunami wave over Fuji Mountain, all that is very well known, iconic images. But what I didn't know then was this amazing story that Hokusai, at the age of 13, had become a major painter. He was painting all kinds of extraordinary things. And a conclave was created where 8 of the wisest and best painters of Japan were brought to wherever Hokusai lived at that time. And they all saw his work and they declared him a master. So he became master painter Hokusai at the age of 13. Next year, like you were saying, he wanted to do sculpture. Then this thought came in his head, Hokusai is a painter. How can Hokusai be a sculptor? So he changed his name. He became Hinpeiko, whatever, think of Nikon, think of some Japanese name. And for the next 3 years, practiced as a sculptor and was declared a master sculptor. At that time, this thought came in his head that I, Hinpeiko, want to be a brocade maker. But I'm Hinpeiko's sculptor. How can I be a brocade maker? So he changed his name again. He changed his name 18 times in his career. And at the age of 81, this thought came in this old man's head, I want to be a painter. And then I say, once upon a time, Hokusai was a painter. So he changed his name to Hokusai and died a painter. So, that's it. You change your identity, you change your approach as you go along. So, I think it's wonderful if you have that ability to jump disciplines. It's fantastic, Navneet, that you can do.
But remember that you became a master first of every field before you did
To become the master.
And the other part of the question, I'll answer it offline. I think the gallery part of it, because that will be a longer discussion. Shall we move on? Yeah.
So thank you everybody, for being here, and this is our last show, but we'll be back in Feb again. But please do go back and see the works with the knowledge and understanding that you have about Dashrath Patel.